Captain Chesley Sullenberger, the pilot whose calm decisions helped save all 155 people aboard U.S. Airways Flight 1549, has revealed that he is living with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. He received the diagnosis in August 2025, but he and his family spent months deciding when and how to tell the public. Now Sully says the same idea that shaped the miracle on the Hudson is guiding him again. Courage can spread from one person to another. But what changes has he noticed? Why did he choose to speak now? And what does his diagnosis mean for the next chapter of his life? For verified entertainment updates without the rumors, subscribe to Startline Entertainment. The latest confirmed update came on July 14, 2026, when Sullenberger released a personal statement and discussed the diagnosis in an exclusive interview with People. He said the disease is currently in its early stage. For now, he sometimes struggles to retrieve a name, may forget that he recently told a story, and does not always sleep as well as before. He described himself as being at the beginning of a long journey rather than at the end of his public life. Sullenberger is 75. According to the account he shared, the first noticeable changes appeared a little more than a year before the public announcement. He had long been known for an unusually detailed memory, so periodic lapses stood out to him and the people closest to him. The diagnosis was made in August 2025 by his medical team, including Dr. Gil Rabinovici at the University of California, San Francisco. The exact testing process and treatment plan have not been publicly detailed. That boundary is important. An Alzheimer's diagnosis can involve a medical history, cognitive assessments, neurological examinations, laboratory testing, and brain imaging. But Sully has not released his private medical records. Responsible coverage should therefore describe only the diagnosis and symptoms he has chosen to disclose. Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that affects memory, thinking, and reasoning. Early-stage symptoms can include difficulty finding the right word or name, forgetting recently learned information, and increased trouble with planning or organization. The disease affects each person differently, so Sully's future progression cannot be predicted from a headline or compared precisely with another patient's experience. That uncertainty is something Sully and his wife, Lorrie, acknowledged directly. Lorrie said the family does not know exactly what the future will bring, but they are continuing to live with hope and find happiness in ordinary moments. She described her husband as the same steady person he was before the diagnosis, the same quality that became central to his public image after Flight 1549. The couple's 2 adult daughters and granddaughter are also part of the family support surrounding him. The couple reportedly debated their next steps after learning the diagnosis. Going public meant surrendering a degree of medical privacy, while remaining silent would have allowed Sully to avoid becoming the subject of health headlines. His eventual decision came from the idea that disclosure could serve a purpose beyond his own family. Sully said he has spent his life in service. As a United States Air Force pilot, commercial captain, aviation accident investigator, safety advocate, and former United States representative to the International Civil Aviation Organization. He now sees speaking about Alzheimer's as a continuation of that work. He hopes families who have been living quietly with the disease will recognize that they are not alone. That framing matters because the announcement is not simply a medical update. It is also a decision about how Sully wants this chapter represented. He is not suggesting that courage can cure Alzheimer's or remove the difficult realities ahead. He is describing courage as a shared response, asking for support, discussing the disease openly, and refusing to let stigma push affected families out of public view. The words carry particular weight because of what happened on January 15, 2009. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 had taken off from New York's LaGuardia Airport for Charlotte when the Airbus A320 encountered a flock of birds. Both engines suffered an almost complete loss of thrust. With limited altitude and very little time, Sullenberger and First Officer Jeffrey Skiles guided the aircraft into the Hudson River. All 150 passengers and 5 crew members evacuated and were rescued. 5 people sustained serious injuries, but there were no fatalities. The event became known as the Miracle on the Hudson, but Sullenberger repeatedly emphasized that the outcome depended on an entire system of people: the flight crew, cabin crew, passengers, air traffic controllers, ferry operators, and emergency responders. That distinction shaped his life after the landing. Although the public often treated him as a lone hero, he used the attention to argue for stronger aviation training, appropriate pilot rest, 2 qualified pilots in the cockpit, and policies designed around safety rather than convenience. In his new statement, he again described public attention as something to be used rather than simply enjoyed. First Officer Jeff Skiles said the diagnosis was difficult news, but he also said Sully remained recognizably himself and that a casual conversation would not necessarily reveal anything was wrong. That observation supports the family's description of an early-stage condition, but it should not be interpreted as a medical forecast. People with early-stage Alzheimer's may continue many everyday activities while experiencing symptoms that are more apparent to themselves and close family members. One of the passengers from Flight 1549, Clay Presley, also reflected on the announcement. He remembered once asking Sully whether the Hudson landing was the defining moment of his life. Sully reportedly answered that it was not, because he still had much more he wanted to accomplish. That perspective now sits at the center of the new disclosure. The diagnosis is significant, but he does not want it to become his entire identity. There is also a major public milestone ahead. Sullenberger is scheduled to be inducted into the National Aviation Hall of Fame on September 24, 2026, in Washington, D.C. He is part of a class that also includes astronaut Peggy Whitson, astronaut Shannon Lucid, and other aviation and aerospace figures. Sully said the diagnosis will not stop him from appreciating what lies ahead. That future-facing message separates this announcement from the way serious diagnoses are often packaged. There is no statement that Sully is withdrawing completely from public life. There is no confirmed announcement that he can no longer travel, speak, recognize relatives, or participate in the September ceremony. None of those claims should be inferred from the word Alzheimer's. At the same time, the diagnosis should not be minimized. Alzheimer's is progressive, meaning symptoms generally worsen over time. There is currently no cure, although medical care, approved treatments, planning and support services may help some people manage symptoms, preserve function, or maintain independence for longer. Treatment decisions depend on the patient's specific health, disease stage, and medical evaluation. Sully has not publicly identified a specific medication, clinical trial, or projected course. It would therefore be irresponsible to speculate about how quickly the illness may progress or what capabilities he may eventually lose. The more immediate story is what he says he still has. He has his wife of 37 years, 2 daughters and a granddaughter whom he says has given life new meaning. He has longtime colleagues and Flight 1549 survivors who remain connected to him. He has a national platform, an upcoming Hall of Fame honor, and a public identity rooted in preparation, responsibility, and service. The start line takeaway is that Sully's announcement changes what the public knows, but it does not erase who he is. The confirmed facts are straightforward. He was diagnosed in August 2025. The disease is in its early stage. He has noticed some memory and sleep changes. His family is supporting him. He chose to disclose the diagnosis on July 14, 2026, because he hopes openness will encourage others facing Alzheimer's to step forward and seek connection. What remains private includes his complete test results, treatment choices, and long-term prognosis. Those details belong to Sully, his family, and his medical team unless they decide otherwise. What viewers should not assume is that the diagnosis immediately removes his independence or judgment. An early-stage diagnosis does not mean every memory is gone, and each person's progression is different. It is also important not to treat ordinary forgetfulness in someone else as proof of Alzheimer's. Concerns about memory or cognition require professional medical evaluation. Sullenberger became famous because, during several extraordinary minutes in 2009, he drew on decades of preparation and worked with others to navigate an emergency no one wanted. He now describes Alzheimer's as another unwanted arrival, one with no simple checklist and no predictable landing. But his public response is familiar. He is gathering information. He is relying on a team. He is speaking carefully about what is known, and he is using a personal crisis to advocate for people beyond himself. Sully once said that courage became contagious aboard Flight 1549, as passengers, crew members, and rescuers helped one another survive. 17 years later, he is asking for that same shared courage from a much larger community. The miracle on the Hudson will always be part of his story. His new message is that it should not be the final proof of what he can still contribute, and Alzheimer's should not be allowed to write the rest of his life before he has lived it.